How you doing, everybody? Another day, another REN chapter. Chapter 3 for REN. All right, let's get into it, everybody. Every day, he's dropping something new, leading up to a
My
new
therapist
song.
was scowling at my weekly anxiety and depression scores like a detective trying to crack a particularly stubborn case. There were no signs of improvement, and the scores followed no real measurable pattern that were consistent with bipolar. After nearly 2 years of talk therapy and taking enough medications to fill a pharmacy, he sat down with me and he dropped the bombshell that he didn't think that I had bipolar.
Okay.
In fact, he said that he didn't think that I had depression at all. And it was a very odd thing to be stripped of an identity in an instant. The reality was that a 20-minute in and out consultation 2 years ago led to 2 years of swallowing pills that I never needed and devoting so much of my time to managing the condition that I never actually had.
Wait. So he coming in and saying, hey, you don't even have depression. And he's like, God, it's been 2 years popping pills, I guess antidepressant pills and everything. He sounds like he's been trying everything under the sun here to figure out what his problem is. But that's crazy. That's crazy.
The emotions inside me swirled around like a mismatched soup. On one hand, I was full of anger and I was bitter about the whole situation.
No doubt.
But I was also hopeful that this new path could offer me the relief that I desperately needed. He told me he was going to refer me to an ME clinic in Bath. I'd never heard of it before, but instinctively true to character, I started researching it online as soon as I got home.
Of course, okay. Did his Google
Apparently
search.
ME is the medical equivalent of a choose-your-own-adventure book, with tiredness as the only consistent plot line. There were no universally accepted reasons as to why the fuck it existed in the first place. It seemed it was largely accepted to be a post-viral condition, but that was all speculative because there were no clear consensus in the medical community what ME even was. The defining characteristic was a tiredness that wouldn't go away with rest. I could relate to this. In fact, I could more than relate to it.
That's got to be rough. Can you imagine just being tired and exhausted, and no matter how much you sleep, how much sleep you get, you're just always tired? I feel like I'm like that a lot, but it's not that. It's mostly because of my broken sleep schedule, having to get up with the kids early some mornings and not, and then this kind of thing. I'd probably be better off if I, got a full 8+ hours a night, but that never happens. But in his case, like he said, it just is some kind of thing going on with his body where no matter how much he sleeps, he's just tired. That's rough. That's rough.
For anyone lucky enough to have experienced this, if you want an idea of what it's like, force yourself to stay awake for 3 nights in a row.
Ooh.
During this time, eat the food that makes you feel terrible, and in this sleep-deprived state, exercise until your muscles give out.
Yes.
By the third day, you'll have a small insight into living with this condition. During the years post-stem cell transplant, where I recovered a lot of my health and functionality, I remember getting COVID and thinking it was a walk in the park compared to the first year of my illness. The difference was COVID lasted about a week. The thick of my illness lasted 8 years.
That's
and
true.
it only was getting worse.
Wouldn't be nearly as bad.
I pinned a lot of hope on going to that first visit at the ME clinic. It was a 6-month waiting list, God bless NHS wait times, but I felt excited to be surrounded by people who would understand me, where I could climb out of this nightmare. But my hopes were pretty quickly crushed during that first visit. I remember walking into a space that looked like a disused classroom where a bunch of people on chairs were sitting around in circles like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
I could feel a sense of camaraderie and that we all felt like dog shit. We were all confused and we were all desperately wanting to feel better. I believe at the time I was probably the youngest in the group. The group leader waddled in and handed us all a booklet that looked like a school timetable. She then sat us down and told about this new revolutionary technique called pacing, where you write down and track everything that you do in a day, and then you do it less. And then with time, do it more again. The theory being that you have a limited bucket of energy compared to normal people, and you need to protect that and gradually push it.
Interesting. So it's interesting because he's like, okay, I got this possible diagnosis of something that is incredibly rare, and a medical terminology can't even really define it. Like the medical field don't even know exactly how to define it. But he shows up after 6 months of waiting, gets in this place, is surrounded by people in a chair. He said, well, now they should all have the same similar symptoms as him. So, like he said, there's a bit of camaraderie there. I like that. And then it's like, okay, so you only have a specific amount of energy per day, so keep track of everything and basically keep track of your energy reserves every day. That's got to be crazy. It'd be like, okay, it takes X amount of energy to get a shower, to get fed, to do whatever you got to do. And oh, I can't even imagine trying to do something like that. That's crazy.
A bucket of energy compared to normal people, and you need to protect that and gradually push it. I thought this sounded pretty stupid, so I raised my hand. I told her about the pain in my body. I told her that my muscles twitched constantly. I told her that my bones ached. I told her that my mouth was dry. I couldn't focus. That some days they'd be without mercy and I'd be trapped in bed for the whole day. But the days that I wasn't, I wanted to make the most of it.
Right.
I wanted to breathe the air and I wanted to live. She told me she understood it's hard, but she didn't really offer more than that. She just pointed at the booklet and told me to follow it. I asked her about things like heavy metal poisoning, about chronically reactivating viruses, about defective mitochondria, about all the things that I read that were linked to chronic fatigue, but she just raised an eyebrow, looked at me like I was a hypochondriac and told me she knew nothing about those things.
Okay.
I remember walking out of the building feeling disheartened and defeated, so much so that my legs buckled as I was walking home. I began to sob uncontrollably on the side of the road.
Though?
An old woman knelt down to comfort me and asked me what was wrong. I didn't even really know how to explain, so I just told her that I missed my friend.
Oh, he summed it up to
Despite
that
my
instead.
skepticism, I stuck to the program for at least half a year, and I kept going for my periodic visits to the clinic, and it did jack shit. In fact, I got worse. I was always getting worse. One thing that particularly struck me about the ME support groups was the pure desperation and confusion. With most other conditions, you're given a diagnosis, a prognosis of whether it's going to kill you, and what you can do to manage it or cure it.
Right.
With ME, you don't get that. You get an indeterminately long sentence to purgatory. You feel worse than you've ever felt in your whole life, and you're given no explanation as to why, and no signpost pointing the way out.
Well, that's disheartening. One sec. Sorry about that. Oh, I had to have a coughing fit there for a second. But yeah, that's disheartening. He's just like, I stuck it out for half a year. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And he's just like having a breakdown. And then like all he could sum it all up with, like even though he's got all these different health issues, when asked, by the lady on the street, what's going on? He just simply sums it up as, I miss my friend. It's like he just didn't want to get into it, right? Like how do you start to even explain to somebody on the side of the road you just met all the things you've been going through for the last several years? It's just brutal and impossible to do. And he's like, yeah, and you just feel like now you're stuck in a prison and there's no way out.
To why, and no signpost pointing the way out.
This guy, he's been through so much. It's crazy.
There was no selection bias to the people suffering. Members of the group were anything from esteemed ex-lawyers to single parents to former athletes. One thing I can say, these people were for the most part all extremely driven and collectively mourning their old lives.
Oh.
There's a stigma that because ME's predominant presentation of symptoms is tiredness, that its victims are just being lazy. I can tell you firsthand that me and every single person I've met with genuine ME would rather run 1,000 marathons than have to live another week with the tiredness and the unrelenting fatigue.
Oh, I can imagine.
We were at war with our tiredness, trying desperately to escape it, and some of us would go to extreme lengths to turn ourselves into guinea pigs to try and find ways out. Suicide was pretty common in those online support groups. It was around this time I was swallowed into the music industry. I was out busking on the streets one day, and I noticed this sketchy, good-looking Mauritian guy with his arms crossed watching me really intensely, as though he was studying every lyric coming out of my mouth. He approached me and asked me if the songs I was singing were mine. I said they were. A big smile was painted across his face, and he told me he just finished recording Plan B's latest record, which turned out to be The Defamation of Strickland Banks, one of my favourite albums of all time. He was looking for a new project to sink his teeth into, and he asked me if I'd come to London to record.
Here we go.
We got into it. The whole time I felt dreadful, but this was a lifelong dream materialising in front of my eyes, so bit by bit, when I could, I'd get the train to London and start chipping away at my first ever album.
Nice.
I didn't really let on how I was feeling during this time because I didn't want to sabotage it. There would be times I'd finish up in the vocal booth after doing the take, excuse myself to go to the toilet, throw up from the dizziness I was experiencing, sometimes with specks of blood, and then I'd go back and pretend that nothing had happened. I'd be sitting around with the whole room spinning and would pretend I was fine. There was only so long that I was able to keep this up.
Man, it's like you finally get your shot, right? Somebody who might have the power to get you on a record label, or at least get you a record and get it out there. And like, he's having to cope with his sickness to that degree, like as if you're not nervous enough, right? You're going in, you're trying to perform with your best of your ability. You're in the booth for the first time, professional booth. And, this is my shot, my one shot, right? One opportunity, right? Like Eminem says. But anyways, and then have to deal with that. Fatigue, tiredness, like all the other things that are on his mind. And then, like, just like you said, dizziness, sickness. But he couldn't let him know, because if he's just like, let the guy know, oh, by the way, here's a list of my issues that I got going on. The guy might have been like, you know what, we're not going to take you on now because too much of a liability or unpredictability or anything like that. You don't know. But good for him for sticking through it. He wanted to make an album that bad that, yeah, wow.
Room spinning and would pretend I was fine. There was only so long that I was able to keep this up.
Whew.
Eric told me it'd be a cool idea for me to start going to industry showcases and start building buzz. Performing live like this was a whole new level of taxing that I wasn't ready for, but I was so ferociously ambitious that I just ploughed through. The usual way it would go is I'd be in the back of Charlie's car, the whole world would be spinning, I'd be trying my best to sleep in it all day, parked up outside of whatever venue or pub it was in London, trying to conserve energy for the show.
Wow.
Sometimes I'd cry a little before I performed. My whole body would be burning. Then I'd brush it off and I'd get on stage and I'd perform as best I could. People would come up to me at the end, pat me on the back. I'd smile and pretend to be charismatic. Then I'd get back in the car and I wish I was in bed and have to endure a 3-hour drive back to Bath from London.
Everything is a struggle for
There was only a few shows where I could keep pretending. I'd usually be trying to disguise the fact that my body was trembling through the fatigue and pain. Eventually I started crying mid-set. It became blindingly obvious to everyone working with me during that time that something was very wrong. I told Eric that I needed to take some time out. My plan was to live at home with my mum for a month maximum, get my energy back, and come and finish the record. That 1 month turned into 2 months, turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months. I pushed myself to total burnout. The distance led to me and that angel breaking up, in part because it was difficult to navigate a relationship when you have so much brain fog, and I didn't know what it was well enough to be able to explain it to her at the time. With a loud thud, I'd been jolted out of a Shakespearean storyline. I lost a record deal and I couldn't get out of bed. My friends from...
Well, could you... Talk about hitting a low. Like, he's like halfway through getting his record done. He's performing live. He's like starting to finally fulfill his lifelong dream. And then the sickness kicks in to the point where he can't deal with it anymore. He's got to move home. And then because of that stress and having to rest so much that he breaks up with his angel girlfriend. And it's just like, man, it's like the amount of depression that could come from that. And he's still here to write about it and sing about it. He's a powerful guy, man. He's got a lot of willpower. Man, my God, is there anybody with more willpower than REN? Just saying.
Shakespearean storyline. I lost a record deal and I couldn't get out of bed. My friends from Trick the Fox never really called to check up on me.
Oh, that's
it felt like the whole world was moving at lightning speed without me. I had this amazing opportunity right in front of me and I was chained to the floor. I was alone. I was sick. I wished that my condition would get it over with and kill me, but it wouldn't. And it felt cruel that it wouldn't. It just let me rot in bed. The whole world would continue to turn and I would rot.
Ooh, that's a dark way of looking at it.
In the next episode, I'm going to tell you about a fight with a television and losing my anal virginity to an 80-year-old man. Stay tuned for that.
What the frig? Oh, wow. As if he didn't have enough going on in his life to have that happen to him? I'm guessing it was not consensual, or maybe it was. I get the vibe that is not. In fact, just the way he expressed that. But we'll see in the next chapter. Oh my God. All right, what is this? Is this a song called Depression, maybe? Or is this I don't know. We'll see. Man, Ren's life is crazy. It's a good thing he wrote it all down, though.
My thought patterns are composed by a time bomb for an author, like pigs to the slaughter. A symphony of self-doubt sings out, breath starts getting shorter. Running water is the state that I wish to become. Instead, concrete envelops my movement and I'm rendered deaf and dumb.
Oh, I like it. It's like, I was almost saying, like, I want to be able to flow like water. Running water is a state that I want to become. I want to be able to flow like water. Life throws something at you, you go around it, right? You're able to get around any obstacle. There's no stopping your movement. You're going where you're going, right? But then to say, instead, concrete envelops my movement and I'm rendered deaf and dumb. Like, he's just like, no. Instead, he just feels like he's a stone statue and he's the total opposite. He doesn't get to do what he wants. He's just got to be rigid and still and in bed all the time. Whew.
Shorter, running water is the state that I wish to become. Instead, concrete envelops my movement and I'm rendered deaf and dumb, unable to heed the advice of others. Don't tell me things will get better.
Yeah.
Cause so far things haven't gotten better. I've got the sweater, poster child, bipolar, ADHD, therapist, wet dream. I don't wanna talk about my father. I don't wanna talk about my dead friend. I don't wanna talk about myself. I'm sick of talking about myself. I'm sick of talking about myself and realizing that talking about myself never ever helps. Still, I call for help, cause I really want help. But the pills didn't seem to help, and the therapist didn't seem to help.
That's tough. He's like, man, I'm crying out for help. But at the same time, he's like, man, I don't want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about my father or my dead friend. Like a lot of these things that are compound issues that's been going on in his life. All this kind of stuff. He's like, I'm sick and tired of talking about it. But at the same time, like, I still need help. So I was like, how do you help someone who... Like, he wants to help himself. I'm not saying that don't want to help himself. He definitely wants to help himself, but he's at the same time, he's burnt out from all this other stuff. Whew.
Help. But the pills didn't seem to help, and the therapist didn't seem to help. But still, I want help. I've danced with the devil in hell. I've sat in a prisonless cell, and here I always dwell, in this prison in myself. I do this thing where my mind travels back to the golden age. You know those times where you were carefree and everything was golden?
Yep, I miss
golden
those.
age. You know those times where everything was golden, where you were carefree and everything was golden? The hardest thing I ever had to do was come to terms with the fact that that time never really existed.
What?
I've always felt so fucking detached and broken, bruised and mismatched. Find it hard to relax, living under the cracks. Tried to fill in the gaps, lying here on my back. Still, I can't find it. Sense of peace in my mind declined it. Pulse increase and my sweat combines with a feeling so deep I fall inside it.
What? Oh, is this over?
Depression, I hate you, depression.
Oh, okay. Holy crap, the amount of stuff that he's pouring out there. That's insane. It's just like... Okay, hold on. The golden age. Missing the golden age. Misses the golden age, right? So it's like... Yeah, to me, like, I like always think of my youth. Right up till the age of... I don't know, college, basically. Life was so good, right? I had everything going. I just was so happy and carefree and, like, doing my thing. And then it's just, and then... but then adulthood kicks in and you got a lot of responsibilities and blah, 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 right? And then you got to worry about a career job and taking care of family and other burdens that come on. But, like, looking back at it now, looking at my burdens that I've had to deal with compared to what Ren had to deal with, mine's child's play compared to Ren. I can't even imagine growing up and having all the different ailments and issues on his mind and grieving and all of that like Ren had. And, well, I had none of that. And but yeah, like he's like there was no golden years. Anyway, let's
go. Peace in my mind declined it. Pulse increase and my sweat combines with a feeling so deep I fall inside it. Depression, I hate you, depression. Your constant oppression, respond with aggression.
Yeah.
They say depression brings you lessons. Constant stressing conceals blessings. You will grow in broken settings. Fuck those lessons, fuck depression. I've been living in your shadow for so long that I forgot how I can shine. How I can find a refuge in my mind. How am I meant to sit here and unwind? The planets align, I feel like I'm cursed. Feel like I'm cursed to just be here to hurt. Feel like I'm cursed to just be here to bleed. But my demons been feeling this way since birth.
Man, he's
depression, I hate you. Depression, I hate you. Depression, I hate you. Depression, I hate you. Depression.
Now he's starting to almost like cry his lyrics. Depression has controlled his life. Like, it's guiding his life. He's like, all these things I want to do, but no, you're containing me. You're turning my personality into more of aggression, and just like all these different things that he's spitting. He said a lot in those couple seconds, but I didn't want to pause it for every single verse. Some people do that in rap videos. They pause it every line and break down every line, but I'm not going to do that. But he said a lot there, and it all had to do with just depression and what grip and control it has over his life.
I hate you, depression. I hate you, depression.
All right, everybody, another mind-blowing chapter in the life of Ren. Every chapter adds more and more to the great picture of what is Ren's complexity and what led him to be this way, and I'm loving the journey. And next, chapter 4, sounds like it's going to get dark and a bit disturbing, but maybe, maybe not. Either way, comment down below, let me know what you thought of it. Watch one of these videos, why not?